Good afternoon to the Winnebago tribal members and community. We are gathered this evening for the mid-monthly tribal council meeting. Thank you for joining us. I don't have my camera function on, so please excuse me. I want to welcome you to the meeting and ask Eric to...
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Call the meeting to order at 5:03 and ask Eric Armel to say our prayer, please.
I'd like to say a few words this evening. Thank you for giving us this day. Watch over our veterans near and far. Watch over all of our mourners, of our infant, feathered, Filipino relatives. Watch over our land. Watch over the decisions that we make this evening.
Thank you, Eric. Council, we have an agenda before us this evening. The first edition under new business, Alan has a resolution to present. So in the he has a conflict. So we're gonna do number one for Alan under new business, and then number two will be the Kirby Williams and Jonathan Seagrass. And I also understand we have an added addition for admin leave for the MMIW walk under tribal council. Is there any further additions?
Madam Chair, I'd like to have a discussion in tandem with the actual added item in relation to, I think it's a new business item number one.
Okay. I guess we'll have an A and B for that then. Did you want to entitle that, or you'll speak during that time, Brian?
No, we can just go at that time.
Okay. Dalma, did you have something else?
Yes. Updated addresses with enrollment and the American Recovery Act Fund.
Okay. Do you want that under new business, Dalma, or tribal council?
Let's see here. Tribal council, please.
Okay. So the third is ARP, and then the third addresses, fourth ARP. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Dalma. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Eric. Discussion. Objection to the motion. Motion carried. 6-0-0. Okay. We have the May 10th regular meeting minutes in the
Madam
packet.
Chair, it's 7. Madam
Is it
Chair,
7?
It's 7-0.
Oh, okay. I thought. I'm sorry. I don't see Eric. Oh, excuse me, Brian or John, but I just heard.
They're on. They're
They're
on.
on,
The
okay.
only one missing is Coley Brown.
Okay, thanks. So we have the May 10th, 2021 regular minutes. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Dalma. Do we have a second? Is there a second for those minutes? Second by Rona. Discussion. Objection to the motion. Motion carried 7-0-0. The May 10th land meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the May 10th, 2021 land minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Dalma. Do we have a second? Louis second. Okay. Discussion. Objection to the motion. Motion carried 7-0-0. Okay, in the packet we have the ratification of resolution 21-95 OVC FY 2021 Tribal Victim Services Set Aside Formula Grant. And so this grant was for elder abuse, and it was approved by a 5-signature last week when we had wake services in place. And so is there a motion to ratify that ratify signature.
Make a
Motion
motion.
to ratify.
We have a motion by Thelma. Eric, do you want to second that?
Yes.
Discussion. Objection to the motion. Motion carried 7-0-0. Thank you, council. Alan, I'll turn it over to you to present your agenda item.
Thank you, council. I believe you were all forwarded, but Garen, if you could let me share my screen, then I can have it up on the screen for council as well. Okay, let's see. We want to show screen 2. You should see resolution 21 dash whatever the next number is, authorization to open custodial account. And this request is really wrapped up in the ARPA funds because the amount that we are anticipating getting, we haven't received it yet. We want to with these being federal dollars, they have to 100% be held in either a bank account that's 100% covered by FDIC insurance, pledged collateral by the bank, or in federal funds, U.S. Treasury market, money market funds, or T-bills or notes or bonds. So currently right now with Liberty National Bank, we have our $250,000 FDIC insurance, and they have securities pledged. And this opening this account will make sure that under the U.S. code, all of our funds are held in the appropriate account, and this will also help working with the bank to keep them from having to pledge a lot of additional securities. And so it says, I can read the starting here, whereas the tribal council holds certain assets of the tribe in accounts with Liberty National Bank, and whereas the tribal council has determined that due to the funds the tribe will receive from the U.S. Treasury under the American Rescue Plan Act, and to protect its deposits in excess of the FDIC limit and pledged securities held by Liberty National Bank, whereas amounts received under federal grants and contracts per 25 USC 450E-3 are allowed to be, 1, invested only in obligations of the United States or in obligations or securities that are guaranteed or insured by the United States or mutual or other funds registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and which only invest in obligations of the United States or securities that are guaranteed or insured by the United States, or 2, deposited only accounts that are insured by an agency or instrumentality of the United States, or are fully collateralized to ensure protection of the advance funds and in the event of a bank failure. And now therefore be it resolved, the tribal council authorizes Liberty National Bank's trust department to open a custodial account whereby funds identified by the tribal council will be invested in a U.S. Treasury money market fund that invests 100% of its total assets in U.S. Treasury debt, as well as a portion to be invested in U.S. Treasury bills, notes, or bonds at the discretion of the tribal treasurer or the CFO. And any tribal council member who is authorized to sign checks at Liberty National Bank will also be authorized to direct the transfer of funds from the custodial account to the Winnebago Tribe's bank account held at Liberty National Bank. And finally, resolved that Rona Steeler as tribal treasurer is authorized to execute the necessary documentation on behalf of the tribe in order to carry out this resolution. So break it down real fast is the funds that we get from the American Rescue Plan Act, we could set them in these money market accounts. It'll get a little bit of interest because honestly right now Treasury interest is horrible. It's like 0.001, and maybe if we can ladder some in some like T-bills or T-notes, like in 3 or 6 month increments, which because of the nature of it, we won't be needing all of this money right away. We can get a little bit of interest on it, which is fine. And then these are liquid, and then as we need them, the funds for expending them based on whatever plan is approved by council, then with 2-day notice, we can bring those funds back in and expend them appropriately. And we're 100% covered, as we should be by federal law.
Thank you, Alan. Lorelai, what's the next resolution number?
2197, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 2197 as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion by Louis. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Madam Chair. This is Lorelei.
We have a second from Lorelai. Discussion. Are there any questions about the presentation we have heard? Delma.
Okay, on any with transfers from that account to the tribe's account, is there going to be documentation attached with that as to what it's going to be used for?
Yeah, it would be for, let's just use an example. Say we're I don't know, for lack of better thing, we're buying a vehicle. We need $20,000 to buy the vehicle, and we have this money set over there. So we'll know that we need $20,000 so that we can contact the bank and say, okay, we need $20,000 to be brought back over to our checking account so that we can expend these funds. This is just a way of setting the money in so that our funds are fully collateralized.
Okay, thank you, Ellen.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, it's 2196. This was already marked for 96. Sorry.
Okay, 2196. Is there any objection to the motion? Without objection, motion carried 700. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Council. I'll get with Rona and the bank in the morning and get this underway. And with that, I will be on my way.
Great. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
I would like to invite Kirby Williams and Jonathan Seagrass to enter the meeting or unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So hello, everyone. Thank you all for allowing us to speak tonight. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Kirby Williams. I'm a citizen of Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, and I am the outreach coordinator for the Native American program with Legal Aid of Nebraska. With me tonight is the managing attorney for the Native American program, Jonathan Seagrass. And so we are here tonight to share one item with you all and request an additional item. The first is a report on our program activities for the Office of Violence Against Women OVWC task grant. So this grant is focused on raising awareness and promoting prevention and providing legal assistance to Native American survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and stalking here in Nebraska. In Winnebago Tribal Council Resolution 20-96, the Winnebago Tribe and Legal Aid of Nebraska entered into a collaborative partnership to address violence against the Winnebago tribal community, and Legal Aid of Nebraska agreed to report to the Winnebago Tribe twice per year. So this is actually the first of those reports. We started this new grant cycle in October of 2020. So the reporting period in the report that you may all have in front of you was actually from October 2020 to December 2020, so just 2 months at the end of last year. Future reports are going to cover longer periods of time, but this was just part of entering into that new grant cycle and reporting period. Some of the activities we highlight in that report, along with our case numbers, is that we've continued to collaborate and assist the Winnebago Tribe's domestic violence program with new staff onboarding. We actually completed a collaborative training with the domestic violence program earlier this year, focusing on trauma response for Winnebago service providers and how to address violence in the community. And then we actually are currently offering a series where we are collaborating with the Winnebago Tribe's domestic violence program It's a virtual webinar series regarding the missing and murdered Indigenous people crisis. So that's just a few of the programs that we've been able to provide since that new grant period started, in addition to the legal services. So all of that is to say, while we are very grateful to have that collaborative partnership, we do want to ask you all for your feedback. We know that COVID has provided many challenges, but especially the challenge when it comes to legal matters for folks that they're facing with this new crisis, especially also ways that we can get in better contact with tribal members about our services since our in-person outreach has been suspended in accordance with safety guidelines. The first part that we wanted to bring to you all tonight. The second item is that we do have a request for a resolution in support of another grant application that we have, which is with the U.S. Department of Justice's Bureau of Justice Assistance. So for the past 10 years, we have received this funding, which helps fund our ability to provide free legal representation to tribal members in civil and criminal matters in the Winnebago Tribal Court. This is the only grant that actually allows us to practice criminal law in tribal courts. And so the Winnebago Tribal Council in 2019 passed a previous resolution in support of Legal Aid's application for this same grant. So for those of you who may have been around for that, this is sort of a repeat, so to speak. With a new grant cycle, the federal funders have requested a resolution from all of the tribal councils that we serve for 2021. So that's where that comes in. With that, again, we do just really appreciate y'all's time. We want to thank you all for getting here tonight. Jonathan and I are both here for any questions or concerns and to get any feedback you all may be willing to provide on how we can better collaborate with the tribe and better serve the Winnebago community and its tribal members. So with that, any questions, comments, concerns, feedback? Jonathan, do you have anything you want to add? John, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Kirby. I'll just reiterate what Kirby said. We very much appreciate all of your time being able to speak about the work that Legal Aid of Nebraska does. We very much
I still remember him.
I mean, the partnership that we have with the Winnebago tribe, and we want to have a collaborative partnership. And of course, if there are any questions, we are more than happy to try to answer those. If there's any feedback that anyone on council has about ways that we can better reach people who are in need of legal services, are in ways that we can make our services more accessible, we in particular would like to learn. So thank you.
Lorelai, do I need to call on you? I'm sorry.
I just have a question. We were just made aware that we have tribal members that have Indian allotments and that their land is being trespassed. And so I'm wondering, does Legal Aid assist these landowners? Can they assist these landowners with criminal trespass in our tribal court?
I mean, we are willing to speak to any tribal members about legal issues that they have. The types of legal matters that we most commonly address with Legal Aid affect someone's children and their families, housing, health benefits, Social Security, Medicaid, things like that, and then things incident to debt. I mean, of course, experience mostly in writing estate plans for people who have trust land. I am familiar somewhat with how the Bureau of Indian Affairs manages people's interests in trust land. I mean, we would be happy to speak to anyone who is in this situation. I'm not sure exactly what assistance we would be able to provide without knowing more. But if a person has a legal matter I mean, if a tribal member has a legal matter and they need legal assistance in that, we are always willing to, I mean, speak to that person and try to determine if there's some type of assistance that legal aid can provide.
Thanks, Lorelei. Kirby, I have a question. This is Victoria. How does a tribal member, do they reach out to your office, or are they automatically linked up with you through our tribal court? And is it just for cases with our tribal court, or could it be in another state or another jurisdiction?
Yes, so we serve Winnebago tribal members either in Winnebago tribal court, or we also are licensed to practice in the other tribal courts here in Nebraska, as well as the state court. So any matter they would have within the state of Nebraska is where we could provide assistance. We have sort of 3 ways that folks can get in contact with us. We have a phone access line that is available for folks to call 9 a.m. to noon. Monday through Friday, where they will talk to a paralegal and start that application with us. We have an online application on our website that folks can fill out. And then we also have where if the, normally we have in-person outreach, but obviously with COVID, we've restricted that a bit to comply with safety guidelines. But we also have partnerships with the domestic violence programs for the different tribes here in Nebraska. So if they have a client who is in need of services, we consider that to be an emergency, and we have sort of a backdoor way that clients can get in contact with us through them.
Yeah.
Okay, my next question is, I remember a couple years ago when you guys came to the tribal council table to ask for this, and at that time, my question was, and was it at that time managed by the University of Montana or something like that?
Yes, it was a grant that was managed by the Montana Legal.
And so is it still managed by them?
Yes, it is. They perform the administrative functions to compile the reports from programs across the country. Legal Aid of Nebraska is one of, I think, the legal aid programs that pools our resources in applying for these funds. We do that because we think it gives the application a better chance of being funded, and also, I mean, the legal aid programs as a whole, particularly the legal aid programs that provide legal assistance to Native Americans. We are a community all working towards the same goal. We think it's fair to, instead of competing with each other for the same funds, to try to work together to collectively the amount of funds and therefore legal services that all the clients are able to provide.
Okay, question at that time, and I guess my question now remains the same, that I just have a problem, you know, like, because the tribe could go after this themselves essentially. And my problem with, I guess, an entity in Montana managing this is that, you know, we are in a pool of this whole pool of resources, and how does that impact our tribal members being directly serviced, or if we're just one of many tribes in this consortium and that we don't have any control over those resources because it's managed in Montana? And how do we know that our tribal members are benefiting in an equitable way from these resources that we've allowed you to apply for in our name?
Yes. I think that Legal Aid of Nebraska's relationship with the Legal Aid in Montana is, it's certainly not one in which folks in Montana are telling us at Legal Aid of Nebraska what to use these funds for. And I know that there's a lot of diversity across the country in terms of programs about what they use the funds for. And so I don't think that it is a Montana decision. I think it's a Nebraska decision by us in Nebraska about how to direct those funds. And I think the other part that I'd like to answer to your question is, there is a formula that the National Association of Indian Legal Services, which is just this group of Indian legal aids that provide services to Native Americans across the country, has compiled about how to equitably distribute these funds across the country. My understanding is that formula takes into account the client eligible population that is located, that each program serves. So Legal Aid Nebraska, we serve Native Americans across Nebraska. And so I think that formula looks at the number of client eligible Native Americans living in Nebraska, and then compares that to the numbers across the country to determine of the total amount of funds that are awarded, how much will be sub-awarded to Legal Aid Nebraska. My understanding that another part of that formula is designed to ensure that even programs that serve a population that is comparatively smaller than other places, which includes Nebraska as compared to the Native American population in other states, that programs will still receive some fine level that would be higher than what the formula actually, if it looked only at population, would provide for. And I think what that means is Legal Aid Nebraska is getting a disproportionately higher amount of money than the client eligible population alone would indicate. And that's one of the reasons why Legal Aid Nebraska, of course, we think that, this is, we think it's fair to apply with other programs. We also think that and appreciate that there is a benefit that we receive based on the way that these programs collectively distribute these funds.
Thank you. Does any of the other council have questions or comments? Eric?
Good afternoon, Kirby, John, thank you for being here. My question runs along the lines Chairwoman Kitchion's has earlier. Legal aid, we have a lot of children, lines, families are looking to bring back to their families on custodial cases. Would you guys be able to help out with that?
Yeah, I mean, yes. One of the things that we can assist with is, parents, other family members who have cases concerning the custody of children. I will say legal aid is not able to, take every case because we have limited resources. But by far the type of law that we do most often is family law, oftentimes representing parents in cases concerning the custody of their children. And absolutely, that is a type of type of legal service that legal aid provides.
Okay, thank you. One more question I have is we have a lot of family members around here that are having trouble within our family due to drugs. They're looking to there's kind of two sides to that. One, the effects of their family members that have been on drugs. There's a psychological effect that they need help with them, and they might be looking for legal aid to get them into places that can help them with their condition to the level that it has deteriorated to. And so, now they're seeing things, they're talking to themselves, they're walking around. They need a certain type of care to see them through their current condition from the use of these drugs. And then another one would be there's families in our community that have people using drugs, selling drugs, making drugs, and they kind of want to distance themselves from these family members in a legal way to ensure that they once they leave, they can't come back. And so we're having a problem with that because housing, one of our housing entities, is when a house comes up hot for methamphetamines, that they condemn that house. And so there's kind of a lot of things that go with that. And so I think that's where my question would be, would you guys be able to help our community out in those circumstances?
I would say that if we have a tribal member who contacts us and they have a legal issue, and it turns out, speaking to them, that drug use, whether their own or whether other family members' drug use is impacting that legal issue, I think that drug use is going to, be a factor in the work that we're able to provide. If we are contacted by a family member or we'll say a parent or a grandparent or somebody who wants to have a relationship with a child, part of our advice, but part of our work with that person is going to be, to recommend and to potentially try to help them locate services that will allow them to be in a position to move away from drug use and to be able to have, a safe, healthy relationship with their children. That's just one example. If we are appointed by the tribal court, which we are appointed by the tribal court to represent people charged with crimes in the Winnebago tribal court. Sometimes we're appointed to act as guardian ad litem for children who are, in the juvenile justice system in the Winnebago tribal court. Oftentimes, if you're charged with a crime and drug use is an issue that was present in whatever led to the charges. If that person can get substance abuse treatment, I think in almost every case that's going to result in a better outcome for the client, not just in their case that they're charged with, but of course, that's going to start the ball rolling for them to make better choices, more healthy choices, moving away from drug use. These are, of course, issues that legal aid and our attorneys can wrestle with in the work that we provide for our clients. We aren't doing our job appropriately if we aren't just going to court with them whenever they have court, but working with them in between court to try to locate avenues that are going to allow them to accomplish their goals in court, whatever the case may be. And I know in our outreach work, in our education and our training work, and Kirby addresses similar issues as well, not from the standpoint of representing an individual client, but in encouraging persons to form more healthy relationships. I don't know if Kirby has anything to add about that.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, in our work, we tend to take what is often referred to as a trauma-informed and victim-centered approach with any of our clients that we come in contact with. So for instance, if we have a domestic violence client, yes, I could get you a protection order and then send you on your merry way, but we know that that's not actually going to address all of the issues that that person may come into contact with. So we can ask about their housing, and we often provide housing referrals. We put them in contact with advocates. We try to help them find resources for, like you mentioned, if we're dealing with a substance abuse issue. So trying to have that more comprehensive approach, like you're talking about, to make sure that we're not just handling their legal matters and then, sending them out the door, because we know that's not going to make an impact across time.
Thank you, Kirby and Jonathan, for those responses. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 21-97 for supporting Legal Aid in Nebraska's application for BGA Tribal Civil and Criminal Legal Assistant Grant Funds?
So moved.
We have a motion by Louis. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Thelma. Discussion. Objection to the motion. Motion carried 7-0-0. Thank you, Kirby and Jonathan, for joining us this evening and for your assistance, our tribal members.
Thank you very much.
Please contact us if you all have any questions in the future.
Thank you. Our next, where's your office at? They might already just.
Our office, sorry. Jonathan and I are located in the city of Omaha currently, but we do still travel we actually most often are on the road, traveling throughout the different tribal communities.
Yeah, the Native American program, we have staff across the state. The majority of us are in our Omaha office. We do have staff in our Norfolk office, and we have an attorney in our Scottsbluff office.
Okay, we will try to post where you can be located and how we can contact your office, so tribal members have kind of access to that, and it's well known.
Sounds good. If you'd like, I can send that to Teresa Little George, if that would be helpful to get to you all, so that can be distributed.
Sure, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is it's not a presentation. Our next discussion is under tribal council items, and it's going to be regarding tribal facility wake and funeral expenses. And I'll turn the floor over to Lorelei.
Madam Chair, on May 3rd, I got a text from a tribal member asking me why are we charging tribal members to use the tribal facility for their loved one's wake and funeral. And I was shocked, and I checked. And the Winnebago Wake and Burial Program, they don't charge tribal members to use the Ho Chunk Center. But Whirling Thunder does. And I just didn't believe that we should be doing that, because it's our own tribal facility for our own tribal members. And when there's a wake and funeral, we shouldn't put that added burden on a family. And so I'm making a motion to waive charging a fee for tribal members' use of our Whirling Thunder gym and kitchen. I'm okay with tribal members, people putting up a security deposit because they'll get that back. But I just don't believe that we should be charging our own Winnebago people to use our own facility to have a wake and funeral for our own loved ones. So I'm making that motion.
Okay, thanks, Lorelei. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Rona.
Thelma.
Discussion. Oh, Thelma, sorry. Lorelei, Thelma. Discussion. Objection to the motion. Motion carried 7-0-0. Thank you. The next item is the MMIW administrative leave.
Madam Chair, before we move on, that item was where I wanted to have the discussion.
Okay, Brian.
Back in 2015, the Tribal Council passed several policies. One of them was in relation to conducting business during funerals. I sent an email to the council members soliciting statistical information from Wake and Burial regarding the overall number of services they provide over the course of any given year. From the historical information that I can recall, and we're waiting for the update, and we understand they have to be able to provide that. But while we're waiting for the update, I do recall that there were well over 50 services provided across an entire year. And because there are only 52 weeks a year, we essentially average one funeral per week. In light of that fact, and also in combination with the policy that was passed and approved in 2015, I feel that it's time that we seriously consider enacting that policy in order to continue to conduct tribal business, because we understand the funeral services will move forward regardless. I have not ever experienced any indication where a family would say, no, don't go forward, as long as they were asked. And I feel that it's time for us to actually have that serious consideration.
Thank you, Brian, for raising that important topic, as well as Lorelei, and thinking of our tribal members and the business that we have to take care of. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. Sometimes we do things by 5 signature and then we fall, in criticism to that too. So it's, acknowledging that the organization has tried to come up with solutions, and that that we try to be respectful in all those approaches and also mindful of our culture. So the floor is open for comments. I'm just thankful that we're having this discussion, because every time we do have those unfortunate times, it's like we have that discussion every single time. Are we canceling the meeting? Is the loved one coming home? Well, they live way over there, so they're not coming back. So let's have the meeting. And so, I think along the way, I just want to make sure that we're consistent and that we try to not do one for one and not for the other and things like that. But I'm interested in hearing from the council, and I'll lean towards, what the table wants to do. Eric?
I think that would be something to look at, because we do have a lot of tribal councils, tribal members that are enrolled here that don't live here, and they have lived a lot of their life away from here, and when they pass and they go home like that, they choose not to. The family chooses not to bring them back, and I think that would be where we should think about making an exception to carry on tribal business. I think it'd be a little bit different if they were within our community making a difference to make our community a better place. That would be one thing. But when they move away, when they're gone 20, 30 years, I think that if the body doesn't come back, then I kind of think that we should carry on with business. But if the body comes back, then we should take that into consideration and pay that respect to the family and push it back for those 4 days. Now, that's just kind of my view on that. That if the body comes back, or if there's anybody within our reservation boundaries, we should take that time off for the families, because it's not just that immediate family, it's the relatives, the friends, the co-workers that would affect us here. But if they leave and they don't really haven't left a footprint here, their footprint's made somewhere else, and they choose to stay there, then that's kind of the difference that I'm looking at. So that's just kind of the way I see it, and the way I would agree with it, with us moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric, for that feedback. Rona?
I'd just like to know, what meetings are we talking? Are we talking about tribal council meetings? Are we talking about publicly broadcasted meetings? Are we talking about our work group meetings? Are we talking about all our online meetings that we conduct with DC? Do we stop everything? Do we stop all business and all meetings? I mean, I'd like a more clarity on all of that, because during the funerals, I did participate in meetings with DC about these new ARPA funds that are coming. Do we put everything on hold? Do we jeopardize funding? Do we jeopardize grants that we apply for? I don't know what is the threshold when we say stop meetings, be respectful. I mean, I just like a little bit more clarity so that I understand that I'm not being disrespectful for anybody when I'm trying to find funding for our community and be accountable for that. So if any of my elders or anybody can point me in the right direction on that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rona. Eric, did you have another comment?
Yes, I would look at that as the tribal council. That Councilwoman Steeler is right, that some business needs to go on, but as far as the tribal council goes, the tribal council meetings, the meetings that we have that take minutes, that is on schedule. We can't control the meetings that are in Washington, D.C. That's irrelevant. That does have to finish. That does have to take place, but that's not a tribal council meeting. That's just a treasurer duty right there. And any tribal council member that might want to partake in that's not a tribal council meeting that would have an agenda and then need to be called to order. That's the way I would see it personally. when we talk about tribal council, I'm thinking the tribal council, because we still have to have our roads out there depending on the weather. We have to have our wildlife and parks and our police officers out there. Business still needs to be conducted. But just as for the tribal council, that's kind of only way that I can speak to this at. Just the tribal council meetings that thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Lorelei has her hand up, and then after that, Thelma.
Madam Chair, I think this individual might be the oldest one in our tribe, Viola LaPointe. I asked her what she knew of this. And she said her relative, Matthew McKee, told her that we don't have meetings when there's a body on the reservation. That's what she said. When there's a body on the reservation, we don't have meetings until they're laid to rest. That's what she told me she got from Matthew McKee. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, Lorelei, and definitely for by lending her wisdom to us. Thelma?
Yes, I'm in agreement with that. When there is a body here, we shouldn't be doing any tribal council meetings or activities. So.
Yeah, thanks, Thelma. And sometimes, maybe one of the things that a good thing that positive that could come of this discussion is that we increase our communication. And usually sometimes people are reaching out to the council. I mean, even council to council peers say, hey, did somebody pass? Oh, well, we need to get a hold of Robin, or maybe they got a hold of Esther. And so every time it feels like we're fumbling around. And of course, Robin's busy, tending to the family. And so a lot of times it feels like it's whoever hears first, and then we try to verify it. And if we could maybe communicate that in a more streamlined process to the organization. I know sometimes there is programming going on and they're like, gee, who's playing music downtown? And it's not out of disrespect. It's just that the message hasn't reached across the community sometimes. So I just want to also say that we could improve there. And I'm willing to help in whatever I can. Whoever hears first, I don't want to say it like that. That's horrible to say it like that, but in what way that we find the information and that we take care of it in a healthy way and a careful way, because we want to make sure that the family's been informed also. And I think that's why it's always so delicate. And if we don't know if it's true or not, is because we don't want to say things like that. Is there any other comments? Oh, Eric.
When it comes to tribal council, and it's just a good flow of communication, so we keep each other in the loop. And so we're all going to get asked questions when we hear about a passing on what's going to happen. And when it comes to fumbling around, we have no control over who leaves us at any given time. And so that's kind of going to be expected, every time someone passes, because there's going to be different family members that will be affected by that, and different roles in our structure within our tribe. And so I think that's kind of just a given, that fumbling around of to grasp on who the family members are, and then how that's going to affect our working everyday work. And so, yeah, I just think that's, like you said, you hate to say that we hear about when people pass, but I think it's good because at least the council is in communication when a time like that comes upon us. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Louis?
I have a problem. When somebody dies, we don't get any information. We hear somebody died, but we need verification that they passed. And we need to know when the funeral is going to be held. There's a lot of information that just floats on the rumor mill. And we got to verify it so we can tell the tribal members. I'll go so far as to have someone from our newspaper go to the family and Flip helped them write an obituary. So that we get that information out, get it into the newspaper. On the desk we've had lately, only Vivian Painter was in the Sioux City Journal. It's an obituary. We leave her out to that email. And it's painful to people who've been identified as passed away and they're still alive. We've got to figure out a way to deal with that and help those families.
Thank you, Louis. I will commit to, working with Esther and Robin and sharing that information. Sometimes other council members have more information than I do, and then we just kind of catch up on the email. That's seems to be the best way that we inform each other, no matter what time. I know I sent you guys a email last week, like at midnight, and it was because I had just learned that information. So I wanted to let you know right away. So apologize for sending those late night emails. But that was the best way I knew to get a hold of everybody. Is there any action coming out of this discussion, or is this just kind of good to know as guidance? Brian, were you anticipating any action?
Well, like I started off with, Madam Chair, this policy, in order to enact basically requesting approval from the family to move forward, is in place. It has been approved for many years. And then historically, I understand the commentary that was offered, but in my first term, when there were funerals that were held, the chair simply went to the family, offered tobacco, and the family always said yes. And the main reason why I'm bringing this up, Madam Chair, is because we are, as a tribe, becoming so large that we will now average 1 funeral per week at minimum. It's going to be next to impossible to conduct business on behalf of the tribe if we have to be able to not conduct business when it is a simple matter of a request to a family who has always said yes and acknowledge the respectful nature of how we move forward, knowing that they are in a difficult time. I don't believe that anyone thinks that this is going to be an affront to anyone. If there's some matter that needs to be discussed with that family, I'm sure that the 9 council members can identify something like that. And then at the same time, the request is made to the family itself.
Thanks, Brian. Louis, did you have your hand back up?
Yeah. I served with young men on the council in the 70s. And when this problem came up, the old men would appoint me to go ask the family if something came up and they had to act on it. So I had a lot of experience going to families. And when you explain to them the importance of the decision they had to make, I never once got turned down. They always said, go ahead. So it's a respectful way to deal with the family, like Ryan pointed out. And they will understand, they will appreciate taking tobacco to them, to talk with them. So I've seen it in action.
Thanks, Louis. My first term, it was that we didn't meet on the day of a funeral, but a gentleman from the council would go and ask the family, and it had happened on occasion that we would have the meeting with permission. And then under new administration, it kind of shifted to that we would cancel every time. And so in my limited experience, it somewhat has been at the discretion of the chair. And so that's why I always ask the table is what's the feeling of the table? And depending on what the decision is to be made, and if there's nothing urgent, it's always an easier decision to postpone. So I appreciate the feedback, and that helps me, guide those decisions. And sometimes, by the nature of sometimes, it's just like an absolutely definite decision, and it just seems like other times, like when the body may not be coming back at all or right away, sometimes we tend to discuss further, like, well, should we just have the meeting? And so I don't think that we could call what each absolute circumstance looks like, but I definitely appreciate this guidance, not only practically but also traditionally. Eric?
I think on that note, that should we, that would be a case by case basis for the someone from the council approach the family, and there may come a time when there is that intersection of something that is in dire need of the council's attention, and we may need to have a meeting or congregate somewhere to take care of some business. And so should that time come, I would suggest that we take something, a gift to the family, for whoever's going to talk to that family, kind of let them know what's going on, to bring them a gift of some type, usually a blanket, that if we need to go in that direction, of something that is in dire need of the council's attention, and we have to go into a meeting. That's if we go that way, that's what I would suggest we do, is take the family a present, a blanket, something to be more along those traditional lines. It's nice to just go and ask and get the go ahead, but to make them feel a little bit better. That's why in the past, every time that I asked a family in mourning if I could do something with the veterans meetings or the powwows or whatever it was, that I would take a blanket over to the family for that purpose of talking to them. So again, that's just my thought. Should that time come upon the council with the intersection of a body and state on our reservation. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Thelma?
I think we should just leave it as is. If it's really important, we could do a 5 signature. When you're in mourning, we've all been there ourselves. We know exactly how it is to lose a loved one. And then to have somebody to come and ask you for something like that, and then you don't want to put the community off. So you're kind of putting them in a spot where they really don't want to be. So I suggest just leaving it the way it is.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your comments, and I definitely will heed the advice and look to your experience and wisdom when we have to make those type of decisions. The next item on the agenda is the admin leave for the MMIW walk. Rona?
Oh no, I still had another comment. So
okay, I'll back it up.
I mean, like our sidebar meetings, I know we were trying to get this grant approved, and we need to approve the architecture contracts. We received 7 of them. That was put on hold because of the state. We had a body laying in state, and so we were told not to move forward. And now we're trying to rush around and gather and go through all these RFPs and get approved. At what point do we? So I'm still not clear. Is it just tribal council meetings, or is it all meetings? I want to be clear on that, because Like right now, we're gonna have to rush this review of these RFPs and do interviews and stuff like that all this week to be able to respond and be in compliance with the grant by Friday. I mean, that was one of my things, you know, at what point and what meetings are we stopping? Thank you.
Thanks, Rona, for that question. I think the topic at hand is the convene tribal council meetings, and those other ones I totally understand, and I was reading some of the email traffic that that we must proceed in events such as that funding opportunity and having to select an architect by a certain date to stay on schedule. So those are the type of cases where it was the sidebar meeting with, you know, Ron Knorr and the team, and I think it just so happened that the work group, which was John, Rona, and I, you know, we were making presents and showing respect to the mourners, but we weren't directly impacted, the directly impacted family. So it's a tough, I guess, balance between wanting to pay respect and having to meet the requirements and the tribal council's business. So to answer your question, Rona, I think when it is a deadline, we have to make ourselves available. And if there's somebody that can go in your place, I think that's where, you know, perhaps maybe, you know, Alan could have listened in and took notes for you. But, you know, you were also showing respect to the family at one point in that week. So I just, I think we have to do the best we can to take care of business and be with our tribal members when we can. And when there's someone else that can be at that meeting in our place, you know, I thank for them for standing in, like, in those times. So that's just the feedback. I don't know if anyone else had any guidance, but I was kind of thinking it was our convened tribal council meetings that we were talking about. Okay. So moving on to the MMIW tribal member, tribal employee administrative leave. So last week we had a letter from Riva Decora, one of the organizers for the MMIW, and in there was a request for administrative leave, and that portion didn't get approved. Just to kind of dial back, I guess the tribe had previously approved tribal administrative leave for the basketball games when the girls went to state, and I think we had done some administrative leave also for the wrestling when they went to state. And it was kind of a hard lesson learned. We got several phone calls from upset tribal elders that didn't receive their lunch when we closed the tribe down to participate in outside activities. And it was hard to hear because we really thought we were doing a good thing. You know, we were supporting the youth, wanting to really be in Lincoln and support them. And tribal member services were directly impacted. On the other side of that, the Educare, so many tribal members in good team spirit wanted to participate, and so they ended up closing Educare. And then we had parents who had to take leave, and some didn't have leave to take because they didn't have a babysitter. So I felt really bad because I really felt happy. I thought we were doing something to support our youth and the teams, but then it had a little bit of collateral damage, and we never want our elders to be impacted, and we don't want our tribal member services to be impacted. And so I just put that out there on why it's difficult to approve admin leave in some of the lessons learned, I guess. And I just want to also say that the tribal members get 30 minutes of wellness. They also get a 30-minute lunch break. So I was thinking maybe it would only have to be an hour of leave. And so I don't know. I just want to make sure I preface the motion or the discussion with that I'm really thankful that the council had given admin leave for the sports activities, but we got kind of poor reviews on it. So I don't know if anyone else had spoken to tribal members or some of the seniors that weren't happy with us, but Eric has a comment.
I think in this case, what we need to highlight is the essential personnel to the everyday production of our working enrolled membership, as in childcare, our elders, the people that feed our elders. You know, and when it comes to that, you know, they have a certain amount of people that work in all these places, and they can break that down to however they would want to ensure that those places, those facilities stay open to serve that facility's purpose. Maybe they can run down to if they can run down to, I don't know, 50% for a day, you know, however that may go with child care or the people that cook for the elders, the essential personnel, you know, and I guess that would depend on the weather and you know, if there's a body in state, however that may go. But my highlight on this would just be the essential personnel on these facilities that help us run and help our enrolled membership go about making a better life for themselves, to keep those places open. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Do we have any further comments or perhaps a motion? Okay. The other thing was that the state admin leave that we had given, it was at the discretion of the supervisor. So the supervisor had to approve it. And then even at that time, I remember some people saying their supervisor wouldn't approve it. And it was like, well, that was the contingency that the council passed, was that it had to be at the discretion of the supervisor. So lots of things to think about and consider. And I really feel like I learned a hard lesson in being so reactive and wanting to satisfy everyone and try to make everybody happy. But I learned that tribal member services are always impacted when we do that. Okay, so no other comments or motions. I'd like to move on to, Eric.
Okay, just real quick, if we can't guarantee that these places will stay open, I would just, I guess, recommend that we just keep everything open, all of our facilities open, because like we said, when we do that, we're creating people that are working and utilizing our childcare services. When that place closes, that not only affects that closing for those people to go off and do whatever they want to do, it also affects the parent of that child that works, which, you know, some of these enrolled members, they're very reliant on that child care. And a lot of our elders are very reliant on the servers that serve them every day. So I would just say, should we come to this decision again, I would just say we just keep everything in motion, and whoever wants to put in for leave can use their personal leave at that time. That's just my thoughts for now, because I you know, the elders and these working parents, these families that were affected by that, you know, I kind of don't like that or agree with that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Eric. Okay, well, I'm going to move on to the next item, the American Rescue Plan. We've been, acronym is ARP. So if you hear us say ARP, we're talking about the American Rescue Plan Act, and that was the next round of funding that the kind of COVID response and recovery spending bill from the federal government. Thelma, I'll turn the floor over to you.
I had talked with a few tribal members, and they feel like they would like to be included on any discussions on these funds and as to ideas and how they can be used within our community, because a lot of times they feel like they are left out in the dark and not knowing what's going on with these funds. So with that, I wanted to make a motion to have 3 consultations for tribal members for this ARP to be held as soon as possible, and to direct the CEO to set up the schedule and make all arrangements. And this can be done like if we can, like a public setting, using our safety precautions.
Thank you, Thelma, and thank you for the thought. I had sent you guys an email yesterday, or no, it was this morning. So the ARP had done a somewhat of a listening session for tribal leaders, and they had a lot of technical difficulties, so they're redoing it, and so that is actually tomorrow at 2:00, and so that'd be a really good thing for tribal council to register for, just as our own learning point. But I really like your idea, Thelma, and I'd be happy to help from the chair's office how we can assist Esther in guiding what we want. Also that Alan would probably have to be involved in that. But so with that, Thelma, is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay, is there to set up some consultations? Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Eric. Discussion. Objection to the motion. Motion carried 7-0-0. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Oh, we had one more, Tori.
Oh, sorry about that.
The enrollment.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm out of order here. Okay. Well, let me back it up. The motion by Thelma, seconded by Eric. Discussion or objection to the motion? Okay, 7-0-0. The next one was updating tribal member addresses. Thelma.
Okay, yeah, that kind of goes along with what we had just discussed, and anything that will come out of that, possible rent, utility, who knows what's going to come out of that. And also with, I'm pretty sure we'll be doing the children's clothing allowance. But I would like to make a motion that to direct Garen to put on their Facebook page as to have the tribal members update their addresses with enrollment. So that would make it an easier flow. Otherwise, we'll be getting the calls.
Second.
Okay, so we had a motion by Thelma, second by Eric. Any discussion? Objection to the motion. Motion carried 7-0-0. Thank you, council. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
We have a motion by Eric. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Thelma. Discussion. Objection to the motion. Motion carried 7-0-0. We are adjourned at 6:16 p.m. Thank you, council. Thank you to the tribal members that have tuned in, and to the tribal organization. Have a good evening. And to the tribal organization, have a good evening.